The storm raged as the rain battered the car windows, but it was nothing compared to the storm inside Damien's eyes as he pulled over to the side of the road. Without warning, he turned to me, his voice cold and firm. "Get out, I don't want you anymore." My heart dropped into my stomach as I sat frozen, drenched in the downpour, helpless. This wasn't just a breakdown of trust, it was the end. The end of a life I had built with him, the man I had once thought was my soulmate. By morning, Damien's empire would crumble. But this was only the beginning. My name is Amina, and 6 years ago I married Damien King, a man who seemed to have everything. A self-made billionaire with a tech empire that spanned the globe, his name on every building, his face in magazines. I never expected to be with someone like him. I came from a small apartment in the city, raised by a mother who worked double shifts just to keep the lights on. I fought for everything I had, put myself through school, worked nights at a call center, and pushed through law school despite the odds. But when I met Damien, none of that mattered. He saw me, not just as a woman, but as someone who could stand beside him and build a life. In the beginning, it felt like a fairy tale. He wasn't just charming, he made me feel seen, and I fell for him fast, too fast, I thought. But when he proposed, I didn't hesitate. I said yes without a second thought, ready to dive into this new world with him. And for a while, it was perfect. But somewhere along the way, things changed. The signs were subtle at first, but I didn't want to see them. The woman who would change everything came into our lives in the most unexpected way, and when I look back now, I can see the storm coming. Hit subscribe to find out what happens next. This isn't just a story about love, it's about betrayal, secrets, and how one night everything I thought I knew was ripped apart. It all started when Damien hired Candace. She was a beautiful, blonde executive assistant with a smile that could disarm anyone. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was imagining things, but when I saw the way she hovered around him, the way she leaned in just a little too close, I started to worry. She would always find ways to be near him, even when I was around. And when I brought it up, Damien told me I was being insecure. "You've got to trust me, Amina," he'd say, his tone dismissive, almost mocking, but something wasn't right. The more I tried to ignore it, the more I couldn't. There were whispers at company events, and I started to notice the way his partners looked at me, with pity in their eyes. Something was shifting, and it wasn't just the weather. The storm that had been building in the air for weeks now hung over my marriage like a dark cloud, but I refused to see it. I wanted to believe that Damien was the man I had married, the one who made me feel seen, the one who made all the sacrifices worth it, the one who still loved me, right? But with every passing day, the distance between us grew. I couldn't explain it, but I could feel it in the small, seemingly insignificant ways he'd changed. The way he'd stopped talking when I entered the room, the way his phone was always face down on the table, the way his late nights at the office became more frequent and more secretive. The Damien I knew wasn't this man. He wasn't someone who'd shut me out. But the truth had a funny way of creeping in, no matter how much I tried to deny it. I was no fool. I knew the signs of distance in a relationship, especially in a marriage as young as ours. But I also knew the feeling of isolation, the suffocating silence that followed when Damien would come home late only to retreat to his study, ignoring my attempts at conversation. The busy CEO act was wearing thin. I found myself obsessing over details. Candace, always there with her blonde hair and perfect smile, was now a fixture in our lives. She wasn't just an assistant anymore, she was a constant presence, a shadow I couldn't shake. She always found a reason to be near Damien, whether it was during office meetings or even after hours at company events. I'd catch them exchanging whispers, and it made something inside me twist uncomfortably. At first, I tried to keep my cool. I didn't want to come off as jealous or paranoid. Damien had always been understanding when I was upfront about my insecurities. But this was different. This felt like more than just a friendly relationship. It was as if Candace was slowly taking my place, not just in the office, but in his heart. One evening, a few weeks after Candace joined, I had to attend a charity event for the company's annual fundraiser. The whole night felt like an act, a performance I couldn't escape. There was Damien, the perfect host, all smiles and charm, mingling with investors and partners, making small talk with everyone in the room. And there was Candace, always just a step behind him, like a shadow who never left his side. The way she'd laugh at his jokes, touch his arm during conversations, it made my stomach churn. The gala was the moment everything changed. It was the biggest event of the year, an affair I had spent months planning. I had helped design the decorations, organize the guest list, and arrange the charity auction. This event was supposed to be the pinnacle of everything we had worked for, both professionally and personally. I wanted Damien and me to shine together. A perfect team, but the night didn't go as planned. I was dressed in a beautiful black gown, one Damien had insisted I wear. He loved it, said I'd look like a queen. I didn't know if that was meant to reassure me or if it was just another way to distract me from what was really happening. I tried to enjoy the evening, smiling and making small talk with donors, shaking hands, looking the part of the perfect wife. But the nagging feeling of unease only grew stronger. Then Candace walked in. She was wearing a white dress, tight, almost skin tight. It wasn't just a fashion statement, it was an attention grabber. I couldn't help but watch as Damien immediately lit up when he saw her. There was no denying it, the way his eyes softened, the way he grinned at her. It was the same way he used to look at me when we first met. I felt my stomach drop. As the evening wore on, I couldn't ignore the tension in the air. Damien and Candace spent the entire night in conversation, completely absorbed in each other, and I couldn't help but notice how everyone around us looked at me, some with pity, others with curiosity. It was like they all knew something I didn't. Around 9:30 p.m., I reached my breaking point. I couldn't stay there pretending everything was fine. The pain was becoming unbearable, and I didn't want to cry in front of all these people. I told Damien I was going to leave early, that I had a headache. He barely even acknowledged me, too busy with Candace. I didn't know what I expected, but it certainly wasn't what came next. I made my way to the parking garage, the cold air brushing against my skin as I stepped out of the warmth of the ballroom. The garage was empty, save for the distant hum of the lights overhead. I leaned against the hood of our car, trying to calm myself, gathering my thoughts. It was the first time in months that I was alone, and it felt like a relief, but that relief didn't last long. The click of heels echoed across the concrete, growing louder. I turned around to see Candace walking towards me. Her face was smug, self-assured, and I felt my blood boil. She had been following me. "You know he doesn't love you anymore, right?" Candace said, her voice light, almost casual, as if she were making small talk. I was taken aback. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. "I've been patient, but it's obvious, Amina," she continued, walking even closer. "He's mine now. He's always been mine." Every part of me wanted to scream, to lash out, but I didn't. I stood there trembling with anger, my hands clenched at my sides. I'd heard enough. "Stay away from my husband." Candace laughed. It wasn't a friendly laugh, it was the kind of laugh that made my skin crawl. "Your husband? Please, he's mine. Don't you see? You've been nothing but an obstacle for me. He's just too polite to tell you himself." My heart was racing, my breath coming in shallow gasps, but I refused to back down. "You're pathetic," I spat. "Chasing after a married man, ruining lives for your own gain." Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment I thought she might strike me. But instead, she stepped back, and before I could blink, she flung herself backward against the car parked beside ours, letting out a shrill scream. I froze, unable to comprehend what was happening. Candace began clawing at her own arms, leaving red marks on her skin, all while screaming my name. "Nicole, get away from me! Help!" she cried, her voice high-pitched and dramatic. Within seconds, Damien and two of his colleagues came rushing down the stairs. "Get away from her!" Damien shouted as he reached Candace, who was now sobbing in his arms. "What the hell happened?" "Nicole, she attacked me," Candace gasped, holding her arms out, showing the marks she had made herself. "She was trying to kill me!" I was speechless. The words stuck in my throat, but nothing came out. Damien wasn't even looking at me. His eyes were fixed on Candace, full of concern. As I stood there, frozen, watching Candace sob uncontrollably in Damien's arms, my world seemed to crack in slow motion. The man I had spent years building a life with, the man I thought I could trust, was now looking at me with disgust. I tried to speak, to explain myself, but my voice seemed to have abandoned me. Candace was crying now, holding up her arms as if she had been severely injured. Damien, still holding her, looked at me with a mixture of confusion and anger. "Amina." "What the hell is going on?" he demanded, his voice rising. "Like, why would you do this in front of everyone?" I started, but my words were lost in the chaos. "You really expect me to believe you?" Damien cut me off, his voice icy. "This has to stop, Amina. You've been jealous of Candace from day one. It's pathetic." I could feel the walls closing in around me. Every word from Damien was like a slap to my face. He wasn't just questioning my actions, he was accusing me of being a liar, of being unstable, of being a jealous, irrational wife who couldn't see the truth right in front of her. My heart shattered piece by piece. I had loved this man with everything I had, trusted him with my deepest fears and hopes. And now, here he was, throwing me aside for a woman who clearly had no regard for the vows I had worked so hard to uphold. The silence in the car was suffocating as Damien drove us home. The rain had turned into a torrential downpour, the windshield wipers barely keeping up with the onslaught. I wanted to say something, to argue, to defend myself, but the words wouldn't come. I had no fight left in me. Damien wasn't speaking either. His hands gripped the steering wheel, his jaw set in a hard line. The sound of the rain hitting the car roof was the only noise in the car, a constant reminder of how badly everything had gone wrong. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I whispered, "You know I didn't do this. I didn't hurt her, Damien, I swear." He didn't even glance at me. "I don't want to hear it right now. You've made your point. You've turned into someone I don't even recognize anymore." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. The man I had once loved, the man who had seen me for who I truly was, had turned into a stranger. He was rejecting me, without question, without hesitation. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to make him understand that Candace had set me up, that I hadn't touched her, but I knew it was pointless. He wouldn't listen. Not anymore. As we neared the outskirts of town, Damien suddenly swerved the car onto the shoulder of the highway, his tires screeching against the wet pavement. I barely had time to register what was happening before Damien turned to me. "Get out." I blinked, confused. "What?" "Get out of the car, Amina. I can't do this anymore." My pulse raced. The storm outside had nothing on the storm inside me. "You can't be serious. We're in the middle of nowhere, in this weather." "It's dangerous." "Do I look like I'm joking?" Damien's voice was cold, emotionless. I shook my head, incredulous. This isn't happening. You can't just..." But he was already opening my door, his hands rough as he unbuckled my seatbelt. The next thing I knew, he was pulling me out of the car. I tried to resist, but his grip was too strong. I stumbled as he dragged me across the wet gravel, the rain soaking through my dress, the cold night air biting at my skin. "No, Damien, please," I cried, my voice breaking, but it didn't matter. He didn't even look at me. I reached for the door, trying to hold on to something, anything. But Damien slammed the door shut, his eyes filled with disgust as he slid back into the driver's seat. "You're on your own now, Amina." The sound of the engine starting was deafening, and then, just like that, he was gone, leaving me alone on the side of the road in the middle of a storm. I stood there, drenched, my heart aching, my body numb from the cold. The rain lashed against me, and I could barely see through the downpour. My mind was spinning. How had we gotten here? How had everything gone so wrong, so fast? I could barely think straight, my hands trembling as I wiped away the rain streaming down my face. Damien had abandoned me, left me in the storm with no more explanation than that. My phone was still in my purse, but it was locked in the car. My keys? Gone. My entire world was in pieces. Damien had taken everything from me, not just the life we had built, but any hope I had left. And for what? For Candace? A woman who had been nothing but a thorn in my side since the day she arrived? I tried to catch my breath, to calm myself. But the more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I had never felt more betrayed in my life. Damien had believed her without a second thought. He had chosen to trust Candace over me, the woman who had been there for him through thick and thin. I kicked off my heels, the sound of them slapping against the wet pavement echoing in the empty night. My feet hurt, but I didn't care. I had to move. I had to get away from the nightmare that was my life. The storm seemed to grow worse as I walked, the wind howling through the trees, the rain so heavy it was like walking through a wall of water. I didn't know where I was going, but I couldn't stay there, not in the place where Damien had thrown me away like I was nothing. I walked for what felt like hours, my clothes soaked through, my mind blank. My body was exhausted, but I kept moving. One step after the other, unable to stop, I had to get away. I had to find a way out of this mess. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I spotted a flicker of headlights in the distance. My heart skipped a beat, but I didn't know whether it was relief or dread that I was feeling. The car slowed, and I watched as the driver rolled down the window. It was a woman, older, with kind eyes and silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. She looked at me, concern in her gaze. "Baby, what are you doing out here?" she asked, her voice warm and motherly. I was too tired to speak, too broken to explain, but the kindness in her eyes made me want to collapse into her arms. "My husband, My words choked off as I tried to form a sentence. She didn't need to hear more, she just nodded. "Come on," she said, her voice firm but gentle. "Get in. You're freezing out here." I didn't hesitate. I climbed into the truck, grateful for the warmth of the heater as it blew against my wet skin. The woman didn't ask me any questions, just drove in silence until we reached a 24-hour diner on the next exit. Inside the diner, she gave me a blanket and bought me a coffee. I felt like I had just walked through the gates of hell and back, and the relief was overwhelming. I was safe for now, but the pain didn't stop. "Baby," she said after a while, her hand resting gently on mine, "when somebody shows you who they are, believe them." Those words hit me harder than anything Damien had said. She was right. Damien had shown me exactly who he was that night. He had chosen to believe a lie over his wife. He had abandoned me without a second thought. That was when I realized that I wasn't just a victim. I was stronger than this, and I would fight, I would rise. The gala was always meant to be the highlight of the year for Damien's company, the event that everyone in the industry anticipated, the one that made all the hard work and sacrifices worth it. The beautiful glittering night where we would showcase the best of our accomplishments, the charity work, the groundbreaking deals, the elite circle we belonged to. For weeks, I had worked tirelessly to organize every detail, ensuring everything went smoothly. And as usual, Damien was at the center of it all. I had hoped, in some small corner of my heart, that this night would be a moment for Damien and me to reconnect, that maybe the lingering tension between us could be forgotten, that the cracks in our relationship could be hidden beneath the polished surface of glittering gowns, expensive suits, and the hum of high society. But I was wrong. When I arrived at the event, Damien looked as perfect as ever. His dark suit sharp, his tie perfectly knotted, his smile flashing like the man who had everything. The man who had made me believe I was his everything. The evening started off well enough. The guests arrived in waves, the orchestra played soft music in the background, and the chatter of the room filled my ears. I mingled with a few of the guests, spoke with some donors, and worked the room as I had done countless times before. But all the while, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It wasn't just the whispers in the corner or the way I could feel eyes on me, some of them full of pity. No, it was something much more subtle, something I could feel in the way Damien had been avoiding me. The way he wasn't looking at me the same way he used to. His attention was always elsewhere. On the men in the room, on the business deals, on Candace. I watched from across the room as she stood beside him, laughing a little too loudly at his jokes. Her hand would linger just a moment too long on his arm. I felt the first bite of jealousy gnawing at my insides. But more than that, I felt something deeper. Something that made my stomach churn. It was no longer just about Candace, it was about Damien changing. He had become someone I didn't recognize, someone I couldn't reach anymore. As the evening wore on, I could feel myself becoming smaller, fading into the background. The more I tried to insert myself into Damien's world, the more he pulled away. He was constantly looking over my shoulder, searching the crowd for someone or something else. Every time I tried to engage him in conversation, he'd become distracted, glancing at Candace or checking his phone, cutting me off mid-sentence with a distraction that felt almost rehearsed. At one point, I caught Damien smiling at Candace in a way that made my heart drop to the floor. It was a look I hadn't seen in a long time. The look he used to give me when we first met, when everything felt effortless, when I felt like the center of his world. But not anymore. Candace was always there, lurking at the edges of every conversation, always a little too close to Damien, always seeking his attention in ways I couldn't ignore. My jealousy was like a fire, burning hotter with each glance they exchanged. I tried to tell myself it wasn't a big deal, that I was imagining things, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Candace was after something more than just a professional relationship with Damien. And the way she looked at me, there was no mistaking the subtle, cold disdain behind her smile. It wasn't jealousy, but something worse. She was securing her place in Damien's life, one casual touch at a time. Then it happened. The moment Candace walked in, the entire room seemed to shift. She was wearing white, but not just any white, a dress so tight, so revealing that I could feel my stomach tighten with dread. It wasn't just a dress, it was a statement, it was a challenge. And what did Damien do? He walked straight over to her, his face lighting up when he saw her. My blood ran cold. The night, which had been filled with bright smiles and laughter, suddenly felt like a nightmare. Candace wasn't even on the guest list. She wasn't invited, but there she was, right beside him, the center of his attention. I watched them, watched Damien's face as it softened, watched his hand rest possessively on her back. He was so engrossed in her that he didn't even notice me standing there watching him from across the room. The humiliation was suffocating. I excused myself from the crowd, retreating into the quieter corners of the venue. Damien had never been like this. He had never made me feel invisible, not until now. I didn't know how long I sat there watching the scene unfold, feeling my heart break slowly with each passing minute. The way Candace laughed too loudly at his jokes, the way Damien leaned in just a little too close. I wanted to scream, to make him see me, to make him understand that he was losing me, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't fight this battle in front of everyone. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. My emotions were frayed, my patience exhausted. I grabbed my clutch and walked toward Damien. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice trembling. He barely looked up. "We'll leave when I'm ready." Those words hit me like a slap across the face. I stood there waiting for something, anything, an apology, a sign of understanding, but nothing came. Damien was lost to me, lost to Candace, and I realized then that I wasn't just walking away from the gala, I was walking away from him. From us. I don't remember how I made it out of the gala. The rest of the night felt like a blur, a haze of loud voices and flashing lights, all too bright and too cold. The weight of Damien's indifference pressed down on me, heavy and suffocating. I wanted to scream, to demand that he see me, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything more. What was there left to say? As the evening wound down, I found myself standing at the edge of the ballroom, staring out through the large windows. The rain had begun to fall in sheets, a thick, angry storm crashing against the glass. I could feel the storm inside me too, the rage and the heartbreak building, swirling together until I thought I might drown in it. I had to get away. I excused myself from a few lingering conversations, feigning exhaustion. My mind was racing. I needed space, air. I needed to escape the suffocating reality of Damien and Candace to find a moment of clarity. I told myself I would wait for him in the car, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't sit there. Not tonight, not after everything that had happened. I walked out into the heavy rain, my heels clicking against the polished floors as I made my way toward the parking garage. The noise from the gala faded, replaced by the soft patter of rain, the occasional crack of thunder. My steps felt heavier with each passing second. The cold hit me like a wave as I left the warmth of the venue behind. It was then that I realized just how much I had been trying to hold everything together. Trying to convince myself that Damien could be the man I married despite everything. I stopped by our car, staring at the dimly lit garage. The quiet was almost unbearable. But I wasn't alone for long. The sound of high heels clicking on the concrete echoed behind me, growing louder and louder until I turned and saw her. Candace. Of course it was her. She was the last person I wanted to see, the one who had been silently tearing apart everything I'd worked so hard to build. The woman who had come into my life like a shadow, a dark cloud hovering over everything that was once bright and warm. She looked perfect, as always. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her dress, tight, white, attention-grabbing, looked like something out of a magazine. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Just an icy, calculated smile that sent a chill down my spine. "You look lost," she said, her voice sweet, almost mockingly so. I tried to stay calm, but my emotions were at the edge of a cliff, threatening to spill over. "Stay away from my husband," I said, my voice steady but raw. She stepped closer, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. "Your husband?" she repeated, her laugh light but cruel. "Honey, he's been mine for months. You're just too blind to see it." Her words hit me like a slap across the face. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Damien had let her into our lives, into our marriage, without a second thought. He had let her take what was mine. But this wasn't just betrayal. This was something darker, something I wasn't prepared for. My heart raced as she continued her taunting. I couldn't stand it anymore. The anger boiled inside me, but I held it in. I wasn't going to let her see me fall apart. Not here, not now. "You think you've won?" I asked, my voice low and dangerous. "You think you can just take him from me? He's not yours." Candace laughed again, louder this time. "You're so naive, Amina. It's been over for you for a long time. But you're too proud to admit it." Something snapped inside me, and before I could stop myself, I took a step forward. "Stay away from my family," I said, my voice shaking with the force of the words. But then she did something I wasn't prepared for. Without warning, Candace threw herself backward, slamming her body against the side of a parked car. The sound was sharp and jarring, echoing through the otherwise empty garage. Then came the screams, high-pitched, desperate, a woman in distress. "Help! She's attacking me!" I froze, confusion sweeping over me. My mind raced to process what was happening. What was she doing? Why was she acting like this? She clawed at her own arms, dragging her nails down her skin, creating bright red scratches that seemed almost exaggerated in their violence. The screams continued, louder now, full of panic. "Amina, stop! Get away from me!" she cried, her voice shrill. I stood there paralyzed, unable to comprehend what was unfolding in front of me. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to gather myself. I hadn't touched her, not once. She was lying. This was all a lie. Before I could react, the sound of footsteps running echoed through the garage. Damien and 2 of his colleagues came rushing toward us. Damien's face was a mask of concern, his eyes scanning Candace as she collapsed into his arms, sobbing uncontrollably. I didn't do anything, I wanted to scream. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Everything felt surreal, like I was watching the events unfold from outside my body. Get away from her, Amina. Damien's voice was cold, his command sharp. I tried to explain, to make him see reason, but the words were stuck. Candace was in his arms, pretending to be the victim, her face twisted in anguish. The sight of her clinging to him, her nails still fresh with scratches, made my blood run cold. Did she hurt you? Damien asked, his voice full of concern. Candace nodded frantically, her tears streaming down her face. She attacked me, Damien. I don't know what happened. She just snapped. I stared at him, my heart breaking, my hands trembling. Damien, she's lying. I didn't touch her. I would never... But Damien wasn't listening. His eyes were fixed on Candace, full of pity and sympathy. His gaze never met mine. Not once. Amina, just stop. You're making this worse, he snapped. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Damien had already made up his mind. He had already chosen Candace. He wasn't going to listen to me. Not now, not ever again. The pain I felt in that moment was indescribable. I had given him everything, my trust, my love, my heart, and he had thrown it all away without question, without hesitation. Get in the car, Damien ordered, his voice cold, his eyes never leaving Candace. I stood there stunned, my body frozen. The storm outside seemed to reflect the storm inside me. I wanted to fight back, to scream, to demand that he see the truth, but it was pointless. I walked to the car, my legs heavy, my heart shattered. The car ride home felt like a different universe, a world where everything I had known, everything I had trusted had been ripped apart. The storm raged outside, the wipers scraping across the windshield in a relentless rhythm. Damien drove in silence, his jaw clenched, his hands tight on the steering wheel. I sat next to him, my body numb, my thoughts racing. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I had never been so humiliated in my life. Candace's lies were still echoing in my head. She attacked me, Damien. Her voice, fake and high-pitched, played over and over in my mind. How had this become my life? How had I gone from being Damien's everything to the villain in his eyes? Damien didn't speak to me the entire ride home. His silence was worse than anything he could have said. He didn't even glance at me once, not even a fleeting look. His eyes stayed fixed on the road, his face impassive. I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation. How could he believe her over me? How could he turn away from me, his wife, without a second thought? But my voice was gone. The words stuck in my throat, caught between rage and heartbreak. The rain lashed against the windows, the howling wind making it almost impossible to see through the darkness. Damien drove faster, as though he couldn't wait to get home, as though he couldn't wait to leave me behind. My chest tightened. I didn't know what was worse, the anger, the disbelief, or the crushing weight of being completely invisible to him. The car slowed, the tires crunching over wet pavement. We were home. But I wasn't ready to face it. I wasn't ready to face the house we had built, the life we had shared, all the memories I was now supposed to forget. Get out, Damien said suddenly, his voice devoid of any emotion. He didn't even look at me. I don't want you here. I froze. What? I whispered, my voice shaking. You heard me. Get out. I couldn't comprehend what was happening. The words felt like they were coming from a stranger. This wasn't the man I had married. This wasn't the man I had trusted with my heart. But it was him. I could see it in his eyes. He was done with me. He had chosen her. He had chosen Candace, and there was nothing left for me here. I didn't move. I couldn't move. The reality of the situation was too much to bear. He couldn't possibly be serious, but then, without another word, he reached over, opened the door, and unbuckled my seatbelt. Before I could even react, he was pulling me out of the car, roughly dragging me onto the wet pavement. The rain was now coming down in sheets, soaking through my dress, my hair plastered to my face. I tried to fight him off, but my legs felt like jelly, my body trembling with shock. No, Damien, I cried, my voice breaking, like, please don't do this, you can't. But he didn't listen. His grip was like iron as he shoved me further from the car, his face emotionless. Get out of my life. You're not my wife anymore. I don't want you here. Not now. Not ever. The cold hit me like a wave, the shock of his betrayal settling over me. I looked up at him, my eyes pleading, but he didn't even look back. The look in his eyes was cold, distant, like he didn't know me at all. You're making a mistake, I whispered, but it was too late. I stood there in the rain, drenched, my body shaking, my mind reeling. Damien was in the car now, his hand gripping the wheel, his face set in stone. I ran to the door, pounding my fists against the glass, my voice hoarse with desperation. Damien, please, don't leave me, please, I can't. But he didn't flinch, he didn't even blink. The engine roared to life, and in the next moment he was gone, driving away into the storm, leaving me behind. I stood there numb and broken, watching the taillights of the car fade into the night. The man I had loved, the man I had trusted, had just left me in the rain without a second thought. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think, the world felt like it was crashing down around me, a torrent of disbelief, betrayal, and heartache. I was alone. The sound of the rain pounding against the pavement was deafening. I couldn't feel my feet beneath me as I walked down the empty street. My heels were abandoned somewhere behind me, kicked off in frustration as I walked aimlessly into the night. The pain was unbearable, a constant gnawing in my chest, threatening to tear me apart. But somehow I kept moving. I didn't know where I was going, but I couldn't stop. I had to keep walking. I had to get away from the life I once knew, from the man who had become a stranger. I don't know how long I walked, maybe minutes, maybe hours. The storm didn't let up, but I didn't care anymore. My thoughts were scattered, my emotions raw. All I could feel was the emptiness that had taken over my heart. After what felt like an eternity, I stumbled across an overpass. The cold wind bit through my skin, and I shivered uncontrollably. My body was exhausted, my legs giving out beneath me. I had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. The last of my hope was gone. Then, out of nowhere, headlights appeared in the distance. The sound of a car slowing down reached my ears, and I looked up, barely able to keep my eyes open. A woman in her 60s with gray hair pulled back into a bun rolled down the window. Baby, what are you doing out here? Her voice was warm, concerned, like a mother calling her child home. I blinked, too tired to respond at first. She didn't ask any questions, just opened the door and gestured for me to get in. I hesitated, but in that moment, I didn't care. I needed help. I needed someone to save me from the nightmare Damien had thrown me into. Come on, sweetheart, she said. You'll catch pneumonia out here. I climbed into the truck, grateful for the warmth. She handed me a blanket and turned the heat up high. The gentle hum of the heater was the first comfort I had felt all night. You're safe now, she said softly as we drove. You'll be okay. The warmth of the truck cab felt like a lifeline after hours of walking in the cold, relentless rain. I sat there, my body still trembling. My mind unable to process what had just happened. Damien had thrown me out like I was nothing, and now here I was, sitting in a stranger's truck, wrapped in a blanket, being driven away from everything I had ever known. It felt surreal, like I was caught in a dream I couldn't wake up from. But the pain, the cold, gnawing pain in my chest, was real. It was the only thing that anchored me to reality. The woman driving, Dorothy, was kind but didn't press me for details. She kept her eyes on the road, glancing at me every so often, her face etched with concern. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? How could I explain to a stranger that the man I had trusted most in the world had abandoned me in a storm without a second thought? I felt like I had lost everything, my home, my husband, my identity. I didn't know who I was anymore. For a while, neither of us spoke. The only sound in the truck was the low hum of the engine and the soft whoosh of the wipers clearing the rain from the windshield. It was comforting in its own way, the steady rhythm of it all. Eventually, Dorothy broke the silence. You don't have to talk if you're not ready, she said, her voice warm and gentle. But you're not alone. And you're safe now. That's all that matters. Her words sank in, and I nodded even though I couldn't find the strength to respond. What was there to say? I was broken, shattered, and I didn't know how to pick up the pieces. I wanted to scream, to tell her everything, but the words wouldn't come. My chest felt tight as though all the air had been squeezed out of me. The floodgates were ready to open, but I couldn't allow it. Not yet. Thank you, I whispered finally, my voice hoarse. I don't know what I would have done without you. We drove for what seemed like hours. Dorothy didn't rush, just took her time, allowing me the space I needed. Eventually, the headlights of the truck cut through the dark, and I saw the glow of a small diner on the side of the road. This is where I'll drop you off, Dorothy said softly as she pulled into the parking lot. Get something warm to eat, take a deep breath. We'll figure out where to go next when you're ready. I couldn't bring myself to argue. I just nodded again, feeling the weight of exhaustion pressing down on me. The thought of being alone in that diner, of sitting there and thinking, terrified me. I wasn't ready to be alone with my thoughts, not yet. "Thank you," I repeated, my voice catching in my throat. I reached for the door handle but paused. Turning back to her, "You've been so kind." She smiled, her eyes crinkling with warmth. "It's nothing, sweetheart, just take care of yourself, okay?" With that, I stepped out of the truck and into the cold night air. The rain had let up, but the world around me felt heavy. Dorothy drove off into the night, leaving me standing alone in front of the diner. I watched her taillights disappear, feeling a strange mixture of relief and sadness. The bell above the diner door jingled as I stepped inside. The warm, greasy smell of fried food filled the air, and for a moment it felt like I was stepping into a different life, one that wasn't shattered and broken. I walked to an empty booth and slid into the seat, wrapping the blanket tighter around my shoulders. The waitress, a young woman with dark hair pulled into a messy bun, smiled at me sympathetically. "What can I get for you?" she asked, her tone soft and gentle. I glanced at the menu but couldn't focus on the words. I didn't know what I wanted, I didn't even know what I needed. "Coffee, please," I managed, my voice quiet. She nodded and walked off, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The truth was, I hadn't thought about what came next. I hadn't even considered the next step. All I could think about was how Damien had discarded me so easily. How he had believed Candace's lies without ever giving me a chance to explain. How had I gone from being the woman he loved, the woman who helped build his empire, to nothing more than a piece of furniture to be thrown out when it was no longer useful? As I sat there waiting for my coffee, the weight of the situation finally hit me. The tears I had been holding back for hours began to fall, silently at first, then harder as the dam inside me finally broke. I buried my face in my hands, the quiet sobs shaking my body. I didn't know how long I sat there crying, letting the pain flow out of me. But eventually the tears subsided and a strange clarity washed over me. Damien had shown me who he really was. He had shown me that all the love, all the years we had spent together meant nothing to him. It didn't matter that I had built his foundation, that I had helped him climb to the top. What mattered was that Candace had come along and I was in the way. I was a problem he didn't want to deal with anymore. But the truth was, I wasn't going to let him take everything from me. I wasn't going to let him strip me of my dignity, my worth, without a fight. I pulled out my phone, wiping my tear-streaked face with the back of my hand. I couldn't bring myself to call Damien, not yet, but there was someone I needed to speak to, someone who could help me navigate this mess. I found her number in my contacts, Rochelle, my best friend since college, the one person who had always had my back no matter what. She picked up on the third ring. "Amina?" Her voice was instantly full of concern. "Where the hell are you? I've been trying to reach you all night." I'm at a diner," I said, my voice still shaky. "I don't know what to do." "Wait, what happened? What the hell's going on?" I swallowed hard, the words coming out in a rush. "He threw me out. Damien, he believed Candace over me. He didn't even give me a chance to explain. He just left me in the storm." "Rochelle." There was silence on the other end of the line for a moment, and then her voice softened. "Oh, Amina. I'm so sorry, but we're going to fix this. I'm coming to get you. Just stay where you are. I'm on my way." I exhaled a shaky breath, feeling a small sense of relief. Rochelle was coming, and for the first time since I left Damien, I felt like I wasn't alone. When Rochelle arrived at the diner, I could barely lift my head from the table. My hands were still trembling, my eyes swollen from crying, and I felt like I had been carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. But when Rochelle walked through the door, her presence was a flood of warmth and familiarity. She had always known how to calm me, how to make the world feel less heavy. "Girl, you look like hell," she said, her voice a mix of concern and frustration. She sat down across from me and didn't wait for me to speak before wrapping her arms around me. "You've been through the storm, huh?" I nodded, my tears threatening to start again, but I held them back. I was tired of crying, I was tired of being weak, I needed to feel something stronger. "I don't even know where to start, Rochelle," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I can't believe he did this to me. How could he just throw me out like that?" She sighed, leaning back in the booth, her eyes filled with anger. "Because he's a coward, Amina. That's what he is, a coward and a fool. And as much as it hurts right now, you're better off without him." I looked up at her, the weight of her words sinking in. "But we built this life together. He was my everything. How could he just decide I wasn't worth fighting for anymore?" Rochelle reached over and took my hand, her grip firm and supportive. "Listen to me. You built that life with him, yes, but you built yourself too. And you're going to rebuild, Amina. It's going to take time, but you're strong enough. You just have to believe that. I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time that night. Rochelle had always been the fire to my calm. She was right. Damien was a coward, and Candace... Well, I didn't know if I had the energy to even hate her. I had bigger things to worry about now. The diner was quiet, the rain finally tapering off outside, but the storm inside me was still raging. Yet somehow, with Rochelle sitting there, I felt a little less lost. Her presence was grounding. She wasn't just my friend, she was my anchor in the chaos. I don't know where to go from here, I admitted, feeling a bit foolish for not having a plan, but there was no shame in it, not anymore. I had been torn apart and I wasn't sure how to stitch the pieces back together. Rochelle squeezed my hand. You're going to take it one day at a time, one step at a time. You don't have to have it all figured out right now, but you can start by taking your power back. Damien might have walked out on you, but he doesn't get to take your future with him. That struck a chord deep within me. I didn't want Damien to control my life anymore. I didn't want his absence to define me. I had been so consumed with making him happy, with building a life together, that I had forgotten about myself in the process. It was time to remember who I was, to find myself again. Okay, I whispered, the first spark of determination flickering inside me. Okay, I'll do it. I'll take control. The conversation shifted to practical matters. Rochelle knew exactly what I needed, a plan, a direction, something to keep me moving forward, even if it was just small steps. First things first, she said, grabbing a napkin and a pen, scribbling down a list. You need to protect yourself, call your lawyer, and get that divorce ball rolling. Don't wait for Damien to come crawling back. He won't. He made his choice, and you need to make yours. I felt a strange relief at the mention of the word divorce. I hadn't even allowed myself to think about it yet, but now that Rochelle had said it out loud, it didn't feel so impossible. I'll call him, I said, swallowing hard. I'll take the first step. Good, she said. And after that, you focus on you. No more distractions. Reclaim your life, your time, your energy. You've got a lot to offer the world, and you deserve better than being treated like this. Over the next few weeks, Rochelle stayed by my side, guiding me through the mess of emotions, the decisions I needed to make, and the logistics of untangling my life from Damien's. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments when the weight of everything would almost crush me. But every time I felt like breaking down, Rochelle was there to remind me that I wasn't alone, that I had a future ahead of me. I filed for divorce the next day. It wasn't easy, and the paperwork felt like a heavy burden, but I did it. I made the decision to take my life back. No more being the victim of Damien's choices. I also started attending meetings for the foundation we had both worked so hard to build. It wasn't just about business, it was my passion, my project, and I wasn't about to let Damien take that from me. The board was supportive, understanding, and they welcomed me with open arms. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. One evening, about a month after Damien had thrown me out of the car, I found myself standing in front of the mirror in my new apartment. It was a modest place, small, but it was mine. There were no fancy decorations or expensive furniture, but there was something comforting about it. It was my space, my sanctuary. I looked at myself in the mirror and realized that the woman staring back at me wasn't the broken, betrayed wife I had been just weeks ago. She was someone else, someone stronger, someone who had learned to stand on her own. I wasn't Damien's wife anymore. I wasn't Candace's competition, I was just me, and that was enough. My phone rang in the middle of the night, startling me from my sleep. I glanced at the screen and saw Damien's name flash across it. My heart skipped a beat, but this time it wasn't with fear or sadness, it was with a sense of resolve. I didn't answer, I didn't need to. I had no more tears for him, no more questions. He had made his choice, and now so had I. It's funny how time works. It can feel like it stands still when you're stuck in a moment of pain, like you're suspended in time, unable to move forward. But before you realize it, time pushes you forward, dragging you out of your past and into a new chapter of your life. A life you never thought you'd have to start over, but now you're forced to. It had been 2 months since I filed for divorce. 2 months since I walked out of Damien's world, and I was starting to see a new life emerge from the wreckage. It wasn't the life I had planned, and it sure as hell wasn't easy, but it was mine. I spent my days working at the foundation, rebuilding it with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. The board members who had once supported both Damien and me now looked to me for guidance. I had the power to shape the future of the organization, and I took that responsibility seriously. Every decision, every strategy, every project was a reflection of my vision, not Damien's. At first, it felt strange to be in charge of something that had been a shared dream, but as the weeks passed, I began to feel a sense of ownership, of pride. This was mine, all of it, and I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me. In the evenings, I threw myself into new routines. I had a small apartment now, modest, but it was a place of refuge, a place where I could rebuild my life without the looming shadow of Damien's presence. It wasn't just about finding a new place to live, it was about creating a new existence for myself. I started to go to yoga classes, something I'd always wanted to try but never had the time for when I was consumed with Damien and the demands of our life together. Yoga was a way to connect with myself, to find peace, to stretch not just my body but my soul. I also started reading again, books I had neglected for too long, stories that inspired me, that pushed me to think beyond my circumstances. I rediscovered my love for writing too. It had always been something I did in secret, journaling my thoughts, my dreams, but now I let it flow freely, expressing the emotions I had kept bottled up for years. One afternoon, Rochelle came over to my apartment. It had become a routine of sorts, catching up, talking about everything and nothing, checking in on each other. She had become my anchor, the one person who understood the depth of what I had been through and still stood by me. "You're looking better," she said, sitting across from me, a cup of tea in hand. "I can see it in your eyes, you're starting to come back." I nodded, sipping my tea. "I feel it too, it's still hard sometimes. Some days it feels like I'm just going through the motions, and other days it feels like I'm free." "Because you are," Rochelle said, her voice firm. "You're not living for Damien anymore. You're living for yourself, and that's the best thing you can do." I smiled, the weight in my chest lifting a little. "I'm learning that, but it's not easy." "No," she agreed. "It never is, but you're doing it. You're proving to yourself that you don't need anyone else's validation to be happy. You've got this, Amina." The first big test of my newfound independence came a week later when Damien reached out to me. The message came through email, formal, detached, like nothing had ever happened between us. He wanted to meet, he wanted to talk. I didn't respond immediately. The thought of seeing him again made my skin crawl, but it also stirred something deep within me, a mix of anger, confusion, and something else I didn't want to admit was still there. After a few days of deliberating, I decided I wasn't going to let him have that power over me anymore. I didn't need to hear what he had to say. He had made his choice, and I had made mine. I deleted the email. The relief that washed over me was almost tangible. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control of my own narrative. Damien didn't get to dictate my life anymore. Not now, not ever. The more I took control of my life, the more I found my voice. I began speaking at public events for the foundation, advocating for the causes I cared about. I wasn't just Damien's wife anymore. I was Amina, a woman with purpose, a woman who had something to say. One evening, I stood at a podium in front of a large crowd talking about the future of the foundation and the importance of supporting underprivileged youth. As I spoke, I realized something I had known deep down but hadn't fully embraced until now. I had a purpose beyond being someone's wife. Beyond the life I had built with Damien, I had a life of my own, a life that mattered. Just as I was beginning to settle into this new reality, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. My heart skipped a beat. "Hello?" I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Amina?" The voice on the other end was familiar, but it took me a moment to place it. "It's Damien." I didn't flinch. I didn't feel the familiar pang of panic that used to seize me when I heard his voice. This time, it felt different. "What do you want?" I asked, my tone calm, even. "I need to apologize," he said, his voice tentative. "I know I screwed up. I didn't think it through. I treated you terribly, and I'm sorry." I stayed silent for a moment, letting his words sink in. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I had let go of that part of me, the part that depended on Damien for validation. I didn't need his apology to feel whole. "I don't need your apology, Damien," I said softly. "It's over. You made your choice, and I've made mine. I'm moving forward with or without you, and I'm okay." There was silence on the other end of the line. I could hear him breathing, but there was nothing else. No protest, no plea. "Goodbye, Damien," I said before hanging up. As the days passed, I felt lighter. Each decision I made, no matter how small, was mine. I was no longer living in the shadow of Damien. I was living for myself, for my dreams, my goals, my future, and for the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The storm had passed, and now I was ready to rebuild, to create a life that was mine from the ground up. The morning light filtered through the curtains of my apartment, casting a soft glow on the small yet peaceful space I had made my own. It wasn't much, a modest one-bedroom place, but it was mine. I looked around, taking in the simplicity of it all. A small couch, a cozy rug on the floor, a bookshelf lined with novels, and framed photos of the people and places I loved. It wasn't the mansion I had once lived in with Damien, but it was a sanctuary, a place where I could finally breathe again. I had spent the past few months slowly rebuilding myself piece by piece, and for the first time in a long time, I could say with certainty that I was okay. More than okay, I was thriving. The foundation was flourishing under my leadership. We had secured new partnerships, reached more communities, and had even started a few new scholarship programs for underprivileged youth. I had thrown myself into the work, finding purpose in every project, every initiative. It wasn't just about giving back, it was about giving myself back to the world, showing myself what I was truly capable of. As I sat at the small dining table sipping my coffee, I thought back on the journey that had brought me here. The storm, the heartbreak, the endless nights of crying and wondering if I would ever feel whole again. I had thought that Damien was my everything, that together we could conquer the world, but I had been wrong. The truth was, Damien had never been my everything. I was my everything. The pain of losing him, of being betrayed in such a public, cruel way, had almost destroyed me. But it didn't. I had come through it, stronger and wiser. I had rebuilt my life, and in doing so, I had found the strength I never knew I had. I wasn't just Damien's wife anymore. I was Amina, a woman who had weathered the storm and come out the other side. And that was enough. A few weeks ago, I had received an offer I never saw coming, an opportunity to expand the foundation internationally with a major partnership that would bring in both funding and global exposure. It was a huge step forward, one that I had dreamed about but never thought I could reach without Damien. But now I realized that I didn't need him to make it happen. I had the vision, I had the drive, I had the team behind me. That day, I made the decision to take the leap. I signed the partnership agreement and made plans to travel abroad to meet with our new partners. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment I realized that my future was in my hands, and I wasn't afraid anymore. It was late in the evening when I got a text message from Rochelle. "Are you free tomorrow night? I think you deserve to celebrate all the progress you've made. Let's do something fun." I smiled to myself, my heart swelling with gratitude. Rochelle had been my rock through all of this. She had been the one person who never gave up on me, who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. "Absolutely, let's do it," I texted back. I sat back in my chair, feeling a sense of contentment I hadn't known in years. The past had shaped me, yes, but it no longer defined me. I had taken back the power to write my own story. The phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from the board of the foundation, confirming my appointment as the permanent executive director. A sense of pride filled me. This was my legacy now, not the one I had built with Damien. This was the work I had done on my own, with my own hands. I spent the next few hours preparing for the meeting with our new partners. As I went through the documents, I felt a sense of excitement for the future. I wasn't just putting my life back together, I was building something new, something even better than what I had before. The foundation was just the beginning. Later that night, Rochelle and I went out to dinner. We laughed over drinks, talked about everything and nothing, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly happy. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. As we left the restaurant, Rochelle gave me a hug. "You've come so far, Amina, I'm so proud of you." I smiled, squeezing her tightly. "Thank you, I couldn't have done it without you." The next morning, I boarded a flight to the first international meeting of the Foundation's new partnership. I looked out the window of the plane as it took off, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. I had come so far from the woman who had stood in the rain, broken and lost. The storm had passed, and now it was time for me to embrace the new dawn. The world was wide open, full of endless possibilities. And I was ready for it. If you've made it this far, you've seen Amina rise from the storm and reclaim her life, and I'm sure you've been inspired by her strength. If you believe in second chances, resilience, and rebuilding from the ground up, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss the next chapter of empowering stories like Amina's. Also, drop a comment below. What part of Amina's journey inspired you most? Let's keep the conversation going, and remember, if you're ready to live life on your own terms, subscribe and stay tuned for more.